A very good afternoon to you and happy Sunday, the 8th day of September 2024. I greet you in the name of the Lord and I welcome you to this very short chat. And actually, this chat is going to be strictly uh, discussing my new Patreon page or my new Patreon account. And I want to explain why I created it, and hopefully I will get many of you who are my very wonderful supporters and partners in every way, brothers and sisters, to join me on Patreon. So give me just 1 second here just to make sure that this is going public. I don't want any of my friends to miss it. So, so this is not a teaching. So it's gonna last less than 20 minutes, maybe even less than that. The reason is also I have a meeting with my partners in about 40 minutes or so. So I know that I'm on very limited time, and I want to make sure that my volume is working here. So give me just 1 second here just to make sure. Okay, it seems like my volume should be working right, and I'm also going to share this with the different groups of friends, and I want to tag my friends also so that they can know that I'm on here. Now, Patreon is something that I was not very familiar with for a while. I was aware that it existed, but I just did not know how it works or what it is for. So I pretty much just stayed away from it. However, this last week, I had the very wonderful opportunity to go to the great state of Montana. And while I was there, I met a very good friend of mine that I had met earlier on in the Ask the Pastor conference, and of course online, Brother Rick Welch of the Burros of Berea. And while we were there, he asked me, brother, why don't you have a Patreon account? And I said, what is a Patreon account, or how does it work? And he was able to help me to understand why every minister and every creator in general should have a Patreon account. And after he helped me to understand it, I was very excited to join the Patreon community. Now, why should a person have a Patreon account, as especially as a minister of the gospel? Number one is because when you are doing ministry, relationships are very important, and you want to create a space in which you can actually expand and work on relationships with those people who are loved ones, and those who support your work, and those who support your work. And so Patreon helps you to have a space that is isolated from everything else, from Facebook, from YouTube, and you have this community that you are able to build and that you are able to interact with in a very personal way. You are able to create content specifically for those people who choose to be in that community and want to grow in that community. As opposed, for instance, whenever I put my post on Facebook, often I'm desiring to actually advance the knowledge of those that I interact with on Facebook. However, Facebook is such a, a mixed bag that sometimes those things that I intended to be helpful to a particular community end up being a crazy debate, or end up being something that was quite undesirable, and that post kind of goes south because people came in there, they began to bring in other stuff that was not part of it. And so Patreon helps creators, and particularly in this case, a minister, to create a space where you can interact with people who are already committed to the program that you are on and want to grow with you, and therefore you can actually produce content that is tailored to their needs. Just like how you have a local congregation, right? As compare that with going to a general meeting of all the churches, or a general meeting of all people in a stadium. Now, everybody in that stadium does not have the same needs, and you will not be able to reach each one of them as you could. But when you have a local congregation in a city, in a particular building, then you are able to begin tailoring what you're doing to the people in your local. For instance, I have people that I minister to on Sundays. I don't necessarily preach to them or teach them in the same way that I preach in the general, platform of YouTube or Facebook, because again, those are mixed bags. So anyway, so that's one of the things that that Patreon helps is to build a community in which you can all grow together without outside distractions. So in other words, for instance, I'm very interested, of course, in teaching people concerning fulfilled eschatology. So now the people that join already know that before they join, and so we won't be wasting a lot of time trying to convince people who are not interested in being convinced, and we won't be distracted. So this community can grow. Now, that does not mean that we will not disagree on certain things within the community, or that we won't have misunderstandings, or that we won't have times where we have to go back and forth until we are on the same mind. But it's a unique, closed community that belongs to this particular Patreon only. Now, another thing is that I've noticed, and I've noticed for a number of years, that there are so many people that are very supportive of my ministry, very supportive of my work, and they want to support me. However, the avenues of support have not been very streamlined, have not been very good. And a lot of times people do not want something where they have to be reminded every week, every month, hey, by the way, we need support. So Patreon helps in financing people that you want to finance, supporting people that you want to support financially, because it is automated. So for instance, you join the Patreon and you say, I want to support your ministry, I want to support your work with $2 a month, for instance. And that's actually one of the tiers that you can do. You can say, I want to support this ministry with $2 a month. Once you've said it, it's done. Now we don't have to be within the Patreon. You will never hear me say, hey, by the way, we need support. We need support. Why? Because the Patreon members came in, they came in with a purpose to support the work, and they committed themselves to that, and now we can move forward. Whereas when you're dealing with a generic space like Facebook or YouTube, you don't know who is on there. You don't know what relationships you have. There's no knowledge of where the commitment is, and so on and so forth. And there are many believers who want to support ministers, but they want something that is really organized and streamlined, and so on and so forth. And so anyway, when I was in Montana, I was shown by my brother Rick how to set up a Patreon account, and he showed me how other ministers are not only being able to stabilize their ministries, but how other Christians are now having an opportunity to support ministries in a way that they wanted to support. And he told me, you just do it and you will see what a big change it will make. And I just want to show you something here, guys. I set this up, I believe it was on Wednesday night. So we are talking about maybe four days ago, not even long. And I'm going to let you guys into my Patreon here just for a second. Let me open it up. And I'm going to show you how it looks like. And I want to show you what happens just in a very short amount of time, because it seems that there were people who had been waiting. Show us how we can be of support to your ministry. But I just hadn't known how to do that. So look at this. This is my Patreon account. And as you can see, it's called Ask the Pastor, which is the name of our online teaching ministry. And that's a picture of me. And of course, it tells you that we will be having Bible study and discussions in the Word. And this here is the name of the Patreon. So it's patreon.com/AskThePastorMagua. Now, within this last 4 days, and by the way, there is so much transparency in this tool, because if you go on my Patreon, it doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter if you support me or you don't support me, you will find this information right here in this box here. So it tells you, that there are how many members there are. It won't tell you who it is, but it will tell you how many members there are, how much they are supporting this ministry with, and so on and so forth. And so, and you see, I loved it immediately, because I remember even far back as 15 years ago, teaching on giving and saying one of the things about Christian ministry that has to be very foundational and upfront is transparency. Transparency. Those who are giving need to be able to see and be given clear reports of what they are giving, or where the giving is going, and so on and so forth. And those who are in ministry ought to have a very transparent lifestyle to where they can show people what is going on and where they're heading to, and so on and so forth. And so this helps with that issue of transparency. I think it is in 1 Corinthians chapter 9 and 1 Corinthians chapter 16, 2 Corinthians 8 and 2 Corinthians 9, where Paul deals with these issues of giving cheerfully, voluntarily, but also the necessity for transparency. The necessity for you to know, I am your minister. I minister to you. How am I doing? Am I being able to sustain myself? Am I being able to feed myself and feed my family, even as I am laboring in the gospel? And so this just gives an opportunity for people to be able to go into my Patreon and see how is the ministry going. And as many people as coming in, as they see this, they're like, wow, I need to be not only a part of this community, I benefit from this community, but I also want to bring in my support into this community. Now, is everybody who joins my Patreon going to be in a position to help financially? Absolutely not. If you saw when I gave that short report there, it tells you, for instance, in the last 4 days, we have 24 members that belong to my Patreon. But at the moment, 11 are the ones who are able and willing and, given that ministry for giving, right? So those are the ones that have been enabled. Oh, this is what I want to show you. So if you look at this Patreon right here, it will show you that we have 24 total members of the community that we are building. And you can see that we put on our meetings, our notices, and so on and so forth. And even we are able to put videos on here. We are able to hold live meetings on the Patreon and so on and so forth. So these are all the meetings that have gone on, the questions that are come on the chat that is going on. So we are building a community. We are building a community so that we can tailor our ministry to those people who want to grow in this ministry and want to be ministered to in this ministry without having to deal with all the different distractions. And that's the mixed bag and the generic form that you find on Facebook and, let's say, YouTube. And so it helps both ways. It helps the community, it helps me as a minister, and it helps us to be more effective in what we are doing. So anyway, I just want to take a few moments here to help people understand why I have created the Patreon. Now, some people are concerned, and I've seen this concern with other people and other ministries, that once you start a Patreon, because there is a financial aspect to it, are you now going to start selling the gospel to us? Are you now going to start withholding the gospel from us? Let's say I'm a person who is not able to give financially. Let's say I just don't have the wherewithal. I live in a poor place, or I don't have a job. I want to assure you, absolutely not. Patreon is not designed in order to create classes of people so that now you can say, I'm going to be preaching to these people and not to these people because they didn't support the ministry. No, that's not what Patreon is for, or that's not how Patreon should be used by ministers of the gospel. Patreon should be used to build a community so that you are able to tailor to the needs of the people. But we will still continue to post our teachings in the big field, in the world, on Facebook, on YouTube. However, when it comes to ministering to people on an individual basis, wherever you are, then now we are able to have this personal community that we have built on Patreon, in which we can do the job more effectively in a more personal and intimate way. Not only that, those that have been wishing and desiring to be a real support to the ministry now are able to do it in a very transparent way, in a way that they can see where the work is going, they can see what the need is, and they are able to respond to those needs without us having to be feeling that we need to do something, let's say, for instance, like constantly do fundraising or whatever the case may be. Patreon helps to take away that burden, and it helps to connect people who are of the same mind. So anyway, that's why I opened my Patreon. We are not going to sell the gospel. We are not going to withhold the gospel from anyone just because they don't have the financial ability. But as many people have said, this helps me now because let's say I want to give. but giving, especially when you're talking about online ministries, is a decision that you have to make, and it's a conscious thing that you have to be reminded of every time. And sometimes, even for us ministers, we don't feel like we are able to do that. We don't feel free to do that. And so Patreon helps us, because once you join, if you want to give, then you are able to do that on your own, and set up your own mechanisms within Patreon to be giving freely, to be giving as often as you want, to start giving or to stop giving, and it's all within your grasp. And I don't have to feel that I need to be reminding you all the time. So it helps us to focus on the right things, to focus on the gospel, to focus on the teaching, to focus on the ministry, and so on and so forth. So anyway, that's what I wanted to share with you all, and to welcome as many of you as feel connected to this ministry, feel connected to this minister, and you want to be part of this community that we are going to build on Patreon, and you also want to be a supporter. Some of you just prayers, or others of you want to support financially. Please feel free to join my Patreon. There are many tiers on Patreon. You can commit yourself to support the ministry as little as $2 a month. You can decide, well, this is where I am well fed. I want to give $200 a month, $500 a month, whatever it is. Every person at every level is ministered to, including the person who says, I'm just not in a financial position to do anything, but I want to be part of this community. You can join my Patreon free of charge, and I will always give the gospel freely, voluntarily, without any thought or any design myself to sell the gospel. I will never, ever, ever sell the gospel, because it's freely given, and the gospel belongs to God, and it is the power of the Holy Spirit. And there is nothing that we have that has not been given freely to us by God. Amen. So now, Patreon, you can join wherever you are. Right now, I have members who are in the UK. I have members who are in the United States. I don't know if I have seen any other countries. I have members who come from all different types of backgrounds in terms of faith. And so it does not limit anyone wherever they are in the world. You are able to join the Patreon. You are able to be part of it. And of course, we will be having programs or different events that we do within the Patreon that are responding to the members of the Patreon and what they need as we grow together. Okay, so this is just supposed to be a short one, and that is as much as it is. I will not be answering any questions right now, but when you join the Patreon, and for those of you who do not know what Patreon is, let me see if I can post that here. I think, yep. One second. So this is a link to my Patreon. As you can see there at the very top, it says HTTPS, and you can just type in if you just want to find out what Patreon is, or if you want to find out my Patreon, just type in your address on internet, patreon.com/askthepastor, and my last name, Magua. Just that, it will bring up Ask the Pastor Magua on patreon.com, and you will be able to join our community free of charge. You'll be able to choose whether you want to be a financial supporter or you just want to sit back and be taught, okay, and fellowship with other believers who are within that community. You are most welcome to do that. Now, I do have to go because I have another meeting. Actually, I have a partners meeting that is starting in less than 20 minutes. I want to thank you for tuning in. I look forward to many of you joining my Patreon. If you're already part of my YouTube subscribers, please, I urge you and I encourage you to join my Patreon. If you are a follower of mine on Facebook, please join my Patreon. It is a very special space, as you will see, especially as we now gear up to really develop this community in the coming weeks and months and years. I look forward to seeing you there, but of course, I know that we'll be seeing each other on many platforms, including Facebook and YouTube, and so on and so forth. So God bless you until the next time. Amen.